Hey folks, Kilt-Man here. Kilt-Man at your services. How are you all? I hope you're all doing very, very well. And right now, for me, it is late on a Sunday evening and it's been very peaceful and quiet. It's been lovely. It might not be lovely and quiet or even a Sunday evening for you guys watching it, but for me it is right now. Now, earlier on this evening, our good friend on the Emerald Isle, Captain Ronnie, sent me a little YouTube clip of the legendary actor Peter O Toole being interviewed on the Letterman show many, many moons ago. And being the great raconteur and drinker that he was, he delivers a great little anecdote about himself and the other legendary actor Peter Finch on the Lash in Dublin. I'm not going to go through the saga. I might put the link to it down below. It's worthwhile. But I got back to Ronnie and said, it's great watching things like that, because when someone's telling, a funny story, an anecdote, a recollection, a reminiscence, if they start laughing whilst telling you it, no matter how boring the story itself might be, they drag you in. And laughter is the whole point, isn't it? Telling stories and telling jokes, laughter. And it got me thinking about my dad, Big Kilt Papa, and his abilities and his inabilities. What I mean by that is, you all know of my father, Big Kilt Papa, Big Fred Mac, a legendary character, hero worshipped by many people. Military historian, done everything, this, that and the other, wheeler and dealer, he'd done everything, fingers in many pies, but a great character, much loved, much missed. But one thing he could never do was tell jokes. He could not tell a joke to save his life. He would stutter, he would stammer. All his jokes tended to be Irish jokes, typically. Paddy and Murphy were doing something. And he'd heard these things a million times, but my dad would always trip over the words. He'd get things back to front. He'd stop and start again, get it all wrong again. But what made it worthwhile was the fact that he was laughing all the way through it. And the longer it went on, the more laughter he would exude. And in the end, it didn't matter about the punchline. The punchline would be absolutely rubbish compared to the whole journey it was to get there in the first place. We'd all be rolling around, ribs would be killing us, sides would be splitting. And then he's laughing because he knows the punchline and he can't wait to get to it. But because of all this excitement and the tripping over, it becomes an epic, almost a Homeric saga in its own right, an odyssey to get there. And yet, bizarrely, my dad was also a brilliant raconteur. He could tell stories and keep you, hanging on the edge of every word. He wasn't the sort of guy that would do like an after-dinner speech, a little tink, tink, tink on the glass. Everybody, can I have your attention, please? Say a few words here. He couldn't do that. He didn't like standing up in front of a sort of an informal occasion. And yet, if he was sitting down at that table, ignoring the actual after-dinner speech, he could have everybody rolling in the aisles, just hold court. Anyone within earshot would be absolutely enraptured by his storytelling. But he could do formal things, as in his capacity as a military historian, he delivered many lectures up and down the country, even abroad, museums, the Imperial War Museum, many army bases, art galleries. He'd go to different societies and he'd take helmets, muskets, pistols, swords, bayonets, uniforms, and he'd put them on a table in front of him and allow people to come up and have a look at these things, these artifacts, these relics of old. But he'd tell the sagas, the true sagas of the Battle of the Somme, the Battle of Arnhem, biplanes and Battle of Britain, the Zulu Wars, and his own particular speciality, the Napoleonic Wars, and especially the Battle of Waterloo. And he would have everybody absolutely riveted. He pored over all the maps and all the details and everything. He knew these things inside out. In his mind's eye, he could see the maps and the strategies and all the armies and the units moving into position. And he was able to convey that to a baying crowd. But because he'd read recollections of people who were there, and their diaries, their notes, their journals, he was able to convey individual people's opinions and attitudes and memories, and everybody would be transported to the battle. He was there in his own mind. He was reliving it anyway, but he's able to convey that to everybody else. The carnage, the thundering of horse hooves, cannons roaring, people screaming, the clash of sabres, musketry. He would evoke all this. You could see, hear and smell the battle. And because he had the memories of people who had witnessed the carnage and the slaughter, you'd be 1 minute, you'd be ebulliently, gallantly riding into the guns, charging. And then next thing, he put the pathos in there. Someone cradling a dying comrade in their arms. So people would be riveted 1 minute and then they'd be crying the next. He didn't know he had this ability to do it. But he did have this ability to convey so many great things and do it with an almost, not just a storyteller's art, but almost like an actor's art. Now, my mother was an actress, stage and screen, big and small screen, many big productions, late 60s, 70s, into the 80s. That was her major sort of boom time. So she was a great actress. My dad was not a great actress. But my dad always wanted to be involved in the acting sort of side of things. The big Kilt-Man was always engrossed with him. And she moved within circles during the late 60s and 70s, certainly a lot of big name stars. I'm sure Peter O Toole as well. And but my dad got his big chance. Now I'm not going to mention A Bridge Too Far, the Battle of Arnhem, because I've covered that so many times. And yes, the debacle of what happened to me dad on the production of that movie. Let's put that one to bed. I'm not going to go through that all over again. You know it, you've heard it. But this would be sort of, I don't know, I think it was the early 80s. I'd be about 12, maybe 13 years old. And like, my two brothers and my sister had all way moved out. And these people, the rest of the siblings, but whenever my dad tried to tell a joke, they'd go, oh, the groan, oh no. Or he began to like lecture us about the Zulu Wars, oh. And for my endless shame, I was complicit in the communal groan as well. But I did listen. They may groan and then walk away, but I would listen the whole time, especially the jokes, you know. But so they weren't around for any of this. And my mum finally said to him, look, I've been offered a part in, it's a short film, it's a BBC play. I cannot remember the name of it at all. And I think I've told this story before when I was paying tribute to big Kilt Papa in the sad wake after he had died. And but it was a haunted house saga set in a big country mansion and filmed on location. I don't even know where, but they were picked up and driven out there. And she went like, look, we're playing, I'll tell you the story of it now. It's a big rambling country mansion, a big estate, and it's haunted. But throughout the show, it lasts about half an hour, I think, you don't know who the ghosts are. And it's only at the end do you realise that my mum and dad, who you thought owned the place, who in fact do own the place, they are the owners, they live there. They're long dead, but they're the ghosts that you've been seeing throughout it without realising they were the ghosts. And at the very end, some guy who's been trying to buy the place, but he keeps seeing these phantoms, and or rather not believing these phantoms genuinely are ghosts. He sees my mother and my dad playing husband and wife, but they're ghosts. And in shock and fear, he opens a window, climbs out and runs off across the lawn, the grounds. And my dad has one line. My mother's in it a lot more than my dad. My dad is the final sort of crunch moment. And he comes in all his tweeds and a deerstalker and his own shotgun, his own double-barreled shotgun, broken open over his arm. He comes in and this guy sees him and then literally legs it. And my dad has one line, but it's the crucial line. The line is, who was that man that bolted out of the window? And that's when you realise that they're the ghosts. Now that, I've got to be honest, that's a really clunky line. It's not good for anyone, even an actor of the likes of Peter O Toole's calibre, couldn't deliver that line properly. It doesn't trip off the tongue. Who was that man that bolted out of the window? Anyway, So comes the big day. My dad's there and he's all excited. He always wanted to be in a TV show or a movie, and the Bridge Too Far one sadly failed, dismal failure. And my mum's got him all, fired up for this. Like, you've only got one line, Fred. You've only got one line. Don't worry about it. He's getting a bit nervous. So everyone's there. And it's a lovely location as well. I've seen this show because we got tapes of it, you see. Although they've long since disappeared into the mists of time. But so the guys ready, right? They're gonna walk in, and I go out the window. Action. The guy like, oh my God, turns white as a ghost himself, opens the window, climbs out, legs it. And my dad, who was that window that bolted out of the man? Cut. Can you say that line again, Fred, please? We're gonna go again. Can you get him back in from the lawn, climb back through? They go again. Who was that man that windowed out of the bolt? Cut. Take 3, take 4, take 5, 6, 7, 8. This goes on for hours. My dad simply cannot get the line right. And the more he tries, the less able he is to deal with it. And he's getting upset and anxious. And my mum knew from actually lifestyle that this director was really coming to the end, and like, look, I don't really need you guys. I can find somebody else to do this. I'm right at the end of my tether. They go again. My dad fluffs the line again. This poor bastard who's trying to get out the window, he's knackered. He's like, oh, because it's like a one take thing. The camera just swoops around from side to side as he bolts and then cuts to my dad and his line. Failure every time. My mum knows it's getting to the crunch. And she just says to the director, look, please, I'll get him through this one last time. That's it. You've got one last chance. Then that's it. We've been shooting for hours now. One line. You've only got one line. My dad's getting all het up. My mum sits him down in a lovely plush armchair. This is a real house, a real mansion. Like white walls and pillars and all that sort of stuff. Big French windows and a lot of footprints on the window ledge. That's this poor guy's shimmying out the window all the time. And the grass outside's all ripped up from him running across the lawn. My mum sits him down and says, Fred, look, I've got an idea. And my dad's like, have you got that? I'll say it again. Okay, right. Are we ready? Can we go? Right, marks, whatever the director says, like. Action. Dad comes in, shotgun over the shoulder, over his arm, broken open. All his tweeds are flapping in the breeze from the French windows. And this guy goes, turns round, opens the window, bolts out the window, off across the lawn. And my dad just goes, who was that? My mum had changed the line and made it simpler for him. The director actually just went, cut! It's perfect! Leave it at that! Not arsed, just, you've said your piece. It wasn't the right line, but it works. Right, off you go. That's my dad. Made up he was, made up. Another time that my dad's power of the gab got him through an awkward situation was actually in a beer cellar in the shadow of Colditz Castle. Colditz, the prison in Germany. And my dad and a Welsh friend of his, a fella called Brim, who was British Army. And Brim was a great bloke. He had a proper moustache. Not one of your handlebar twirly things. One of them thick ones that goes like that and then comes down. Nothing in the middle, just comes down like that and just stops under there. But it's thick and fuzzy. Just like an upside down horseshoe bolted to his face. But Brim was a great lad and massively into military history and all that, and a collector as well. So he and my dad toured around Europe many times, going to different battlefields and museums and reliquaries and finding stuff and wheeler and dealing. And they were in this beer cellar, and there was a gang of Nazi skinheads who were causing a bit of trouble. And my dad, he's not one for like getting involved, but he's also not one for running away either. And his legs were bad at that particular stage, so he couldn't run away, even if he wanted to. So they were sitting there, but Brim could handle himself. But even Brim was saying this was looking a bit nasty. And I say Brim's got that tash, he's got a mean look, a 1,000-yard stare, and his shirt sleeves are always rolled up, he's tattooed, but he's got arms like Popeye, big thunderous forearms on him. You know, you don't want to mess with Brim. But this gang came over, and Brim was like, okay, right, I'll take a few of you down, but Fred, I might need a hand up you. And they started, the gang started speaking to them, not snarling, actually coming out with a lot of weird stuff that my dad has this thing about a sort of smile, a half smile, meaning he's probably shitting himself, but it's still, it looks confident. And Bryn said, we're all right. They actually think that you were a prisoner in Colditz, and they think you're amazing. They think you're a hero. So of course, once my dad knew that, Bryn could speak German, you see. I should have mentioned that. Bryn could speak German. So my dad then began to regale them with tales of his escape attempts. 15 or so attempts, dressed as a woman, dressed as a cow, dressed as this, dressed as that. And then finally his big escape, which was successful, on a homemade hang glider off the roof. But Bryn was translating it for this gang, and the gang sat there enthralled. They bought them drinks. My dad was just talking complete and utter gibberish. He was making it all off the cuff, and Bryn was regurgitating it in German for them. And the two of them walked out of there as absolute heroes to a bunch of nasty Nazis. But that was the way of it. Of course, my dad knew all about German imperial warfare and all their uniforms and all the battles of the Second World War, all the battles of the First World War. He knew about Hitler and all the Nazi, uprisings and all this sort of thing, the Third Reich. So he could pepper what he was saying with genuine, authenticity. And Bryn relayed it, and the gang loved me dad. Hero worshipped again. So this is my point. Storytelling. It's not just, an art form that you can learn, like doing stand-up, telling anecdotes. It's something you've either got it or you haven't. And one of the things you've got to remember is to pause at a certain point. The pause is just as important as the words you're putting out. A pause in the right place has the audience, or whoever you're talking to, the crowd of people you're talking to at the bar, they're waiting. That pregnant pause, the timing of that, and then you hit them with the next bit, a salvo or the punchline, and that's how you've got people. And my dad could do that. Whether he believed he could do it or not, he definitely could do it. He had that ability, and it was just a joy to behold him struggling to tell a joke, because that was one of the absolute greatest memories I have of my dad. Is just rolling on the floor, laughing at him, attempting to tell a Paddy and Murphy joke and getting it completely arse over tit. But the voyage to get to the final punchline, as naff as it may be, was just comical gold. So we could do that. But this was all brought on by Captain Ronnie and Peter O Toole and Peter Finch. Cheers, y'all. Another guy who could tell a story properly and put humour and pathos into it. Poignancy. So, my old man, wherever he is, he'll have them all rolling round in the celestial heavens or whatever caverns of hell he may be in. He'll have them all cavorting with laughter. And if my mum is there with him, which I'm sure she is, she'll be, Fred, you're telling it wrong. And he'll be like, and then he'll hit them with it. So folks, I have been always Shabby Kilt-Man. Please, in the meantime and as ever, let's just wind away the late hours on a Sunday evening in between time. Please keep it Celtic, and I'm going to see you all later. And I will endeavour to put the link to the Peter O Toole, David Letterman interview. It is priceless, These old drunken, hellraisers, of which there were plenty of them. You've got your Oliver Reed, your Richard Harris, Anthony Hopkins, oh God, who else? David Hemmings. So many of these great guys that could drink you under the table, but still have you enthralled with stories, even as you're crawling through the gutters as dawn is breaking the next day. These guys would still be telling you tales which would have you absolutely convulsed with laughter, hysterics. So remember, laughter is the key to life. It is. So poignancy, relevance has all come crashing to an end now. I'll see you all